Last Pint Productions presents the New Way podcast. The New Way contains adult content and is recorded in advance. The following episode was originally recorded on June 16th, 2021. Listener discretion is advised.
So you were in Vietnam, if I'm not mistaken?
Yeah?
Were you in the shit?
Yeah, I was in the shit.
Last night, Darth Vader came down from planet Vulcan and told me that if I didn't take Lorraine out, that he'd melt my brain.
Here's how you get him. He pulls a knife, you pull a gun. He sends one of yours to the hospital, you send one of his to the morgue.
We came, we saw, we kicked its ass.
Everybody wants to be naked and famous. Everybody wants to be just like me, I'm naked.
Will you help teach me about this? What is it? A new way?
Hello and welcome to the New Way podcast, where we break down pop culture so you don't have to. I'm your host, Matt Shank, joined by my co-hosts, Mr. Benjamin Scott Wilson.
Oh, hello there.
And Mr. Nicholas Anacroce.
To you and yours, Matthew. Fair Matthew. How are you?
I'm very excited to see you guys again after last week's tour de force episode, which I had a great feeling after that episode, and listening back to it, I had an even better feeling. It entertained me and made me laugh out loud, and I knew it was coming because I was part of it.
You probably think this song was written about you.
I very much do. Yeah, I mean, Ben's Rent song, especially just the like petering out at the end is just, it is amazing, absolutely amazing.
We gotta get that streaming. We gotta get some revenue.
Well, and I think it's important for a lot of our, so I think you guys take it for granted because you do a lot of music stuff and you've been in bands and things that was recorded by yourself, Ben, just you and multi-tracks and things. And
before the girls wake up in the morning at 4
a.m. No, that was at work, actually. That was the best part. And the best part was I had planned on recording it like around 12:30 because I'll just hop into the voiceover studio and pop it out really fast. Basically, what I do is I load the song, like a karaoke version of the song, into Audacity, but I listen to it, but I only export the vocals and then I re-import it into Premiere and sync it, and then export it as an MP3. Really only takes me about 20 minutes altogether. However, because of scheduling, I ended up recording it around 1:15, and the woman who works adjacent to the sound booth then later commented,
"Oh boy,"
said, "Were you singing Rent?"
Well, a version of it.
Yes.
I was like, well, fortunately, this is about the third time this has happened. So she was just like, I'm not even going to ask questions anymore. But she had to ask me if I was singing Rent. So I thought that was funny.
It was.
And Ben, you might as well take this opportunity to plug your master class for recording Rent-related karaoke songs.
Just karaoke songs in general. I feel like I've got that down to a nice one-take art now.
Science, yeah.
Well, Nick and I wrote a song in like an afternoon, and then
which is beautiful.
And
I mean, that listening back to that was just because I didn't get to hear that live. That was
movie making magic.
Yeah. I was only privy to the actual script of it, and but hearing it back, that was more beautiful than anything I could have ever imagined.
Welcome to episode 164 of The New Way, the Circle Jerk episode, where we compliment each other for an hour.
You know what? We've earned it, and I have no problem doing this whatsoever. Nick recorded his vocals in literally a sentence. We finalized lyrics, and 5 minutes later, I had a perfect track back in my hands, and it was great.
Yeah, I was about to say, I mean,
magical.
A circle jerk kind of correlates to our topic today in a way.
Jesus. Wait, are we doing the porn star episode this episode?
No, I thought we were doing the circle jerk episode.
Oh, just circle jerks. Just in general circle jerk. Yeah, well, we'll get there. I do have an idea, by the way, for a new topic on the podcast that I want to run by you guys and our audience today. So yesterday morning, I received a phone call from one-time caller in and longtime listener, Dr. Rick. And
Hi, Dr. Rick. Hey, listen, we were fresh off the Simpsons ride this past week in Universal, so I
That will always be the Back to the Future ride to me.
This is true. They're both great rides, but I do miss that Back to the Future ride, man. So Rick had been listening to a podcast, and it spurred a story idea in him. And so he called me up and he said, I don't know who else to call with this. Like, I could call my wife, but she's not going to want to listen to my bad movie pitch. So will you listen to my bad movie pitch? I said, yeah. So we kind of talked about this idea, and we bounced some ideas back across each other. And I thought, we do our comic movie pitch game on the show, but we haven't ever actually done something that we do a lot in general, which is kind of pitching real ideas that maybe don't have a lot to them. It's a log line, or it's a concept, and kind of this idea of like, what is this germ of an idea? I see Ben's licking his lips.
The reason why I was licking my lips is kind of like walking out of a Circle K with a pack of Marlboro 27s and being like, hey, Nick, what would be a really, really cool idea for a bar scene? Which is literally what happened to us in college.
Strange things were afoot.
Yes. So I think this really got me kind of excited. And I think that I would love for some of our listeners that if they're interested in doing this, and we can also do it with each other as well, but call in for an episode with your movie pitch, and let's actually develop something live to tape on the podcast that's a fresh idea where we kind of, as a group, develop someone's concept into, and it doesn't have to be we could pitch it as a TV series, we could pitch it as a musical, since we're into doing that kind of stuff, or a book or whatever, but just kind of something that's an interesting idea, and then I'll copyright it and then steal it and produce the good one, and then I will leave the show behind and become rich and famous.
Well, that's not really how it works. I could call some of my agent friends or studio heads, and then after we develop the pitch, they can pick it apart, make it a hollow husk of what it once was, and then they can profit off of it.
Will they give us a small stipend?
Times are tough.
Okay.
We're coming out of a pandemic.
Can we get like a 10 grand and some Josta Cola?
You want some walking around money and some Josta? I hear
you. Walking around money and Josta. That is a Harry Nilsson album that has never was made.
You know what? I bet you Harry Nilsson would have liked Josta. It's an acquired taste for people with extremely good taste.
I love it. I love it.
I mean, if Harry Nilsson didn't like it, I'm sure the inmates in his asylum on,
if Harry Nilsson didn't like Josta, it was because he put a lime in it and didn't just take it straight from the can. Old habits die hard.
Take that Josta straight in the can. That's some advice from Uncle Nick.
Do you think they're gonna make it? Do you think they're gonna bring it back? Like, I'd be so happy.
I mean, without getting into any spoilers from episode 2, Josta does make another appearance in Loki this week. So.
Do they reference it? Just tell me if they reference it.
I haven't seen it yet. I kind of want to watch it later, but I probably won't.
There is
I'll probably watch it tomorrow.
It is prevalent.
It
is more prevalent in this episode than it was in the first episode.
My God.
I was thinking about it last week and I didn't mention it, but so in Brazil, one of the most prevalent, I think it's called Presidente soda, is like one of their main sodas. It's just called, the name of the company is the Guarana soda, and it tastes a lot like Josta.
From the Guarana herb. From the Guarana herb, right, Ben?
Fruit.
It is a fruit.
I thought it was an herb. You corrected me. I realized that's what happened.
I let you steamroll me on that episode, and I listened back, and I'm like, no, it is a fruit. This is my thing. Well, I borderline built an identity around this discontinued soda. I know it's a fruit. I should have stuck to my guns.
Nick's first child, if it's a masculine child, will be named Josta. So I'm curious.
I'm happy you know more about a not quite aphrodisiac from South America than I do.
Well, now I'm very curious.
A building block of the modern day energy drink, Ben.
Do you think that this Brazilian Guarana cola or beverage was appropriated by the white men at Pepsi to make
Yes,
Josta.
absolutely.
Oh
absolutely.
no!
Wait, can I get that soda? Can we get that soda?
You can easily get that.
I mean, you got to
imported.
go to Brazil. So,
Dude, you don't have to go to Brazil. They have it at like you
It's
can
just-
buy guarana soda at like I can get.
well,
it at
there's
Western
lots
Beef.
of like energy
I
drinks
gotta
have
go-
guarana in them.
I should go visit our buddy John at Galco Soda Pop Shop and get him to order it if they don't have it.
Yeah,
there you
honestly, if
go.
there's anyone that was going to have Josta or that cola, it would be Galcos.
Oh my god!
Very
I hadn't
much so.
I hadn't even thought of it. They had balls. They had BAWLS. Remember balls?
Oh, I remember balls from the 90s.
Balls.
That had guarana, and it kind of like it was sort of like that 70s show was balls, and Freaks and Geeks was Josta. Josta shouldn't have gotten discontinued, but somehow balls survived for a couple more seasons.
Was Surge a Coke product?
Yes, it was.
Because I was a Surge guy. I never had Josta.
Mountain Dew. Now see, Surge and Josta. Me and my sister preferred Surge on the family road trips. I don't get me wrong. I love me some Surge. And again, the only time I thought about Josta is when they brought back Surge. And I was like, they brought back Mulan sauce. They brought back Surge. They're never going to bring back Josta. No one will ever know what it was. It'll just fade away into oblivion, a footnote in pop culture soda history. And then Loki comes by.
I don't
a golden light beam from the heavens.
At least it wasn't a soda that nobody asked for, like Pepsi Clear.
Well, I don't know about nobody asking for it because I want some fucking Pepsi Clear right now.
You're
in
the
my
only
Pepsi
person
Clear?
that wants Pepsi Clear.
No, it's
Pepsi
terrible.
Clear.
Oh god, it was so dumb.
Crystal Pepsi, you mean? Crystal Pepsi.
It was called Pepsi Clear.
It's a Pepsi free. You can't get a Pepsi.
If you want a
if you're
Pepsi
Pep-
free,
Nah.
kid, you got to go to a different movie because that's not the line.
I don't know if Ben remembers that. Like I had heard the rumors about the Surge thing, and the only time I ever saw it was in Georgia when I went to UGA with Ben. We were driving from Atlanta to Athens, and we stopped at a gas station, and they had like a huge cold case of Surge, and I I this is the most amazing thing I've ever seen in my entire life.
It was 2015. Yeah, that was fun.
Now, not unlike the Dreamcast was the pioneer in online gameplay, but was ultimately discontinued.
Yes.
The Surge soda can introduced for the first time in a non-alcoholic beverage the wide mouth can.
The wide mouth 16
so you
ounce
get more
can.
of that
Surge
energy into you.
I remember as a kid, it's like I want 0.3% more Surge in my mouth at any given time. They had a wide mouth. I was like, yeah, fuck yeah. Wide
It's
mouth
not that you're
can. This is
getting
awesome.
more liquid in general. You're just putting it faster into your gullet.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm glad that you guys were such fans, but I'm happy that I put my stock into Mountain Dew Code Red.
Yeah. It was a better
Mountain
investment.
Dew.
sadly.
I can't do any Mountain Dews. Ugh.
Mountain
Panther
Dew
piss.
is Surge.
but Mountain Dew is still around.
It's
is really not.
yeah. That's fine. I can't drink any Mountain Dew product. I hate. It's the worst. thing for me.
Surge
would-
tastes just like Mountain Dew. It's the same.
I
not to
don't agree with
derail the
that.
conversation, but I would say that
from sodas because this is what the episode's about, Ben.
Diet Mountain Dew is one of the GOAT diet sodas. in my opinion.
Oh my god!
Wow.
No.
That was
I'm gonna say
surprising,
Diet Dr.
even.
Pepper is the goat of diet sodas, but
Yeah,
It's on the
I have
Mount
to-
Rushmore for sure.
I have to agree. I
but
mean,
Mountain
Diet Dr.
Dew is.
I don't know.
Mountain Dew was only when
Matt-
there was nothing else available that you had to drink it, like it was like you were
Matt,
in a
no-
prison.
No hate. This is the circle jerk episode. Remember, I want you to fawn over something.
Yes.
I am
Circle
not
jerk.
fawning over Mountain Dew. You will not get me to say a nice thing about fucking Panther
Surge
piss.
is Mountain Dew.
Yeah, I'm saying
Stop
you can't-
saying
you can't-
that.
You can't suck off Surge in one.
Jesus, what? I wasn't sucking that wide mouth off at all.
With
I
that
just
wide
want
mouth.
man. I just want to.
Hey, Surge.
Well, what's the wide mouth for? If not for sucking stuff off.
Oh man, I just
Hey,
don't.
Surge.
I don't
You got
like
a
this.
pretty wide mouth.
Oh shit. Well,
Ding, 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 ding.
16 ounces to freedom.
I think that'll wrap up our preamble for the show today. But yeah, so I'm kind of interested to get into this topic tonight because I put something on this weekend that I very much thought I was going to like quite a bit, and I didn't, and I didn't like it for some reasons that talking to Ben and Nick and some of our other friends didn't really jive, I think, maybe with normally how I feel about stuff. So I'm actually really curious to talk about this. And I think we can start with it a little bit, but we want to talk about stand-up comedy tonight. And I think there's some interesting things to look at, because stand-up comedy is such it's obviously a performer-driven art, but there are so many different types and styles and nuances, and there are a lot of things you have to look at when you're looking at stand-up. So I kind of broke it down, at least in my head, into kind of 4 areas, which is you have your delivery or your voice, which is kind of your cadence, how you're presenting the material. You have your actual material itself. You have the character that Nick is petting a dog, and I can't not look at him pet the beautiful dog.
When it first panned down, I was just like, oh, this is part of his performance.
Yeah, it got weird first, and then it got okay. It went from bad to wholesome very quickly. But
this is why you shouldn't stop the YouTube podcast.
This is true. But yeah, so you have delivery, you have material, you have character, and then you kind of have structure, sort of the things that you're maybe talking about or how you're talking about them. And what kind of brought this to the forefront is this new Bo Burnham special that is going crazy online right now. And I've watched a bunch of Bo Burnham stuff before. I loved 8th Grade, which is the film he did. And I expected very much to like this product from him, and I didn't.
So did I.
Yeah.
So did I.
And I had a
heartbreaking.
Yeah, I had
heartbreaking to hear this.
A weird reason for not liking it, and it's really tricky because you look at when you're looking at stand-up comedy, you look at somebody like Rodney Dangerfield, right? Rodney Dangerfield gets out there, and his entire gimmick is he gets no respect, and he's got an ugly wife, and they have a terrible sex life, and it's just it's a character. He goes out every night, he does a character, he does these lines, it's his delivery, it's his stuff, but it's a character. We know that this isn't actually his real life. He's not actually telling real stories about his wife, and it's very clearly a character.
In real life, he was much closer to his animated alter ego, Rover Dangerfield.
That's a little known fact, but that is entirely God. Now I just want to watch that show and drink some Josta Cola, because they were probably popular at the same time.
Yes, they were. I guarantee you, my sister and I, at one point in time, she was drinking a Surge. I was sipping on a Josta, watching Rover Dangerfield. Guaranteed.
It's a foregone conclusion. We would get back there, but so you have a character like that. You have somebody else like Don Rickles, who's kind of does these terrible jokes and racist and all these things, which isn't really necessarily him. It's character, right? And then you have comics that are very much autobiographical and kind of are telling stories that are at least supposed to be somewhat like their own lives, but then they'll also draw attention, and I like comedians that will make a joke. Like they'll do the setup. They're like, I was talking to my wife the other day, and it's very clearly like a bad setup, and they're like, for the purposes of this joke, like I did this thing and did this thing. And what's kind of interesting is there is a crossover between comedians and this kind of one-man show idea of performance art, of personal art and emotion. And I think that's where it got a little bit tricky for me with the Bo Burnham thing. And it's really funny, Ben. I almost wish because you had mentioned the thing about him having his wife or partner, this woman he's been with for 10 years or whatever. I didn't know that until you mentioned it, and then I watched the special. And I think if I had watched the special without knowing that fact, I would have responded to it. I would have gone nuts for it. And that was my issue, is that I thought Bo Burnham's special is basically about someone sort of struggling and coping with the pandemic in almost real time.
But here's the thing, and because you and I are on opposite sides of the spectrum for our reaction to the
and I'm opposite of both of you guys in this one.
Well, of course, because the thing is I understand it's entirely performative. And as a matter of fact, when Nick mentioned it weeks and weeks ago, when he first recommended it, you had even mentioned they were literally augmenting the imagery, not with a digital zoom and post, but with the idea of setting up shots to then elicit an emotion. So it's filmmaking more than it is to me being a comedy special, if that makes sense.
And I believe he did get help shooting that. I even, when I talked to Matt about this, I go, well, if that breaks the illusion, does that mean you don't like Blair Witch Project? and in a lot of ways, this is actually kind of similar.
Very similar.
Yeah, no, totally.
I saw Blair Witch, and my first thing, I was so high on it. I'm like, and the crazy thing is they just found it. It was, edited together. Now, after a couple of weeks, I look at that and I go, he had to have. Okay, look. Now we know that yes, he wasn't alone during the pandemic. He had love of his life with him. Okay, and then you look at the shots, you go, man, did he really do that all himself? He had to have had help. That doesn't break my illusion, because even though and Matt, you live alone, I live with a roommate. Ben lives with his family, and even though I was not alone like you were alone, quote unquote, during this pandemic, I still felt like
Sure.
Bo. Every song resonated for me in a real personal way, and it wasn't my experience.
That's your problem. Fuck you. No.
Yeah, I just feel like it's possible, to not. I think that it probably took it a little more personally, Matt, because you actually did live through the pandemic in the way that Bo is, presenting.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
And I think that you kind of resent that because you did it, and to be disingenuous in that way, I think feels a little personal to you.
And I only went crazy like 3 times and like tried to self-destruct.
Right.
So,
but here's my point, and my point kind of from it all along, because I totally understand all of that, is that it doesn't matter whether he was spending an hour in that room every couple days just working and developing these songs and filming these songs and doing everything by himself, which I think for the most part, yes, I think he's presenting it in a way where he's just like, yes, I'm working by myself in a room by myself, and I'm going to do as much as I can by myself. I feel like that's genuine. I feel like the for somebody who has been super, super transparent about mental health ever since the late 2000s, which Bo Burnham has, he's spoken about it very candidly about his own issues. I didn't feel any of it was disingenuous. I felt like this is a nice reflection of his perspective, and it just happened to have that lens put on it that was more artistic and more cinematic because of the constructs of the way the comedy special was presented. I don't think that takes anything away from it. I don't think that takes away from the messaging at all. And so I don't feel, even though I understand it's performance art, I'm not going to say it's disingenuous because, he wasn't actually locked in that room. He wasn't being a character actor for 6 months and locking himself in there and torturing himself in order to create some sort of art. That's the type of stretch I can't really correlate to.
Yeah.
To it being genuine versus not.
Well, and it's kind of, part of it's also just, I'm kind of looking at it also from how it's being received. And it's very funny. So there's another thing that came out this year that we talked about in the show. And I know this other property divided people as well, and I was on the opposite side with this one, which is very on brand for me to be completely polar opposites on different opinions on something. But in and of itself was a special earlier this year that is a performance art magic piece that is absolutely manipulating the audience. Although my argument is that tells you up front several times, I am manipulating you. You are being manipulated. Do not fall for anything that you are seeing here. And when people fall for it at the end, they're like, oh, well, he was doing a trick. I'm like, yes, he's been telling you the whole time he's doing a trick. But I understand people not enjoying or responding to that special either. Like I get it. It's sometimes you bring the baggage. I think with the Burnham thing, and I'm going to go back and watch it again because I really do want to kind of understand what he was going for. I know he got to like the suicide joke thing, or there was like a bit with that he was like talking about suicide that made me it made me not want to be watching it at that point. And I'm like, I think I maybe even like stopped it for a moment, that I was like, okay, something didn't jive with kind of what I've seen him do before. And that's the really interesting thing. And I know, Nick, you have a reverse perspective from it, which is also super fascinating in that you watched this first and you're going back to his other stuff, and his other stuff now feels kind of trivial and trite and maybe a little dated as far as subject matter and things that he's poking fun at. And that's kind of interesting to me to go the reverse way with him.
Well, I'm not here to say that his dick jokes aren't funny. Like his dick jokes are funny, but to me, it is he reached his Pokemon final form with Inside, and it's like we like the little Pokemons too, but when they evolve and they're much bigger and better, and it's just for me, he got to the top of the mountain, and that old stuff is still funny, and the music is still good, and the performance is always there. Like his big trademark is on his stand-up show is this big elaborate opening number with lights and choreographed, and you could see that played with Inside. But when you take it off the stage and try to do it in a room, it's just so sad and kind of pathetic. And you appreciate the art, you appreciate the effort, but and that's the whole point, because he's battling this depression to finally get to a point where he could be on stage again after quitting for 5 years, and now he is ready, and now he's doing all these same extravagant effects he would have done on stage in one room to himself. And to me, that's the during this pandemic, trying to create dumb content to take your mind off of it and try to still be funny. Like, god damn, did that hit so close to home for me.
I think when you're spoiler alert, Nick is going to be in town in a few weeks. I think we need to watch. I would like to watch it again, because I think I need and this is something really interesting, by the way.
You don't need to like it, too.
No, I don't. And but I think this is an interesting conversation. This goes a little bit outside of our scope on this, but this is something that I think about a lot as far as art goes. I 100% agree. People should be able to dislike or like anything they want. No one should ever be convinced to like something. But I think there is a opportunity and a really good thing, especially when you're with close friends or family or loved ones that you share similar tastes with, or that can bring perspective to things. I think rewatching stuff at times under a new lens is a really awesome way to let art continue to grow and change, because I think there are times that sometimes you watch something and you just don't get it in the way that someone else can maybe contextualize it so that you respect it a little bit more, or you understand it a little bit better.
For me, it's music. Like I bought the best of Oingo Boingo. It was the first Oingo Boingo album I ever got, and I hated it. I thought I wasted my money, and I kept listening to it, and I like it. With this though, I understand if there are certain points that are triggering and bad. What are you laughing at?
I was gonna say, because all the best Oingo Boingo songs are deep cuts.
Yeah, they were actually the first one. But anyway, yeah, I understand when you talk about like the suicide thing and just having something trigger you. I think that like in part of like getting through pandemic is also sort of the self-care and knowing what your triggers are and taking care of yourself and turning it off when you have to turn it off. And like I get that. What I specifically liked about his multiple references to suicide, and he does actually come out and say, like, I want you to know I would never kill myself. This is just, this sucks. And like that is another moment that actually was opposite for me, like totally resonated. Do I want to kill myself? No. Was there at points at this pandemic at your lowest where you just thought about what it would be like not to exist during this?
Not to deal with shit anymore.
Just to be gone. And is that suicidal? No, I think it's different.
It's existential.
But like
we call it living in Florida and or LA.
Not
often.
Not like keeping that taboo and addressing that. I honestly feel it feels appropriate for a whole special about surviving a once in a lifetime pandemic.
Well, I want to expand on the conversation, obviously beyond Bo Burnham, but the one thing I was going to say is that
I'm fine with talking about Bo Burnham all episode.
If you recall, I told you I really have always liked Bo Burnham as a person. I like his movies. I like his perspective. Every interview I've ever heard with him, I really love the guy, and I've never really connected with his comedy. His leaning into performance art with this made me like him a lot more.
Agreed. Like leaning into that. I feel like it's sort of like he's always been good. He's always had good music. He's always been funny, but like he found the niche.
I have never gone out of my way to listen to Bo Burnham comedy, and I have listened to a lot of comedy. And when I say a lot, I mean I have entire comedy albums memorized, probably 3 or 4 dozen of them.
Eddie Murphy's Delirious, go.
Eddie
Murphy's Delirious,
don't.
Murphy is not
canceled. Don't problematic. Don't. I just for our.
No, I'm gonna do Bill Cosby instead.
please, God. I'm gonna hit the cough button here and turn you both off for a second. No. So just what's kind of interesting. So the thing that we're talking about, for those of you who have not seen it, I urge you to watch it. It is an ambitious special, to say the least. But coming into it, also, I'm coming from this. This is the Bo Burnham I had kind of been knowing, other than 8th grade, and there are parts in these comedy shows that he does as well that get very kind of personal and interesting and different.
And the Bo Burnham that you love also had reoccurring bits in early Bo Burnham where he would say like, this is a character. People understand this is a character, and he would like throw that in and then jump right back into character, and that was the joke.
So
I really just, I'm afraid of you, really, and I have to put on this super thing, and then he does the character, So he's not, in a way. You talk about that like magic special. I haven't seen it. But in a way, he in the past he has foreshadowed that he is performative.
Inside is different. I mean, we can all agree that at least the intent of the look of Inside is different than his other.
Yeah,
because it's inside. Yeah. This is supposed to be like the behind the scenes, like the real thing. But
is it inside, like inside his mind?
This could listen. I'm gonna watch it again, but I also completely cherry picked a clip for this that I thought would be funny for this, but here we go.
The problem is with a lot of modern country music, what is called stadium country music, the sort of Keith Urban brand of country music, is that it is not honest. It is the exact opposite of honest.
Where instead of people actually telling their stories, you got a bunch of millionaire metrosexuals who've never done a hard day's work in their life, but they figured out the words and the phrases they can use to pander to their audience, and they list the same words and phrases off sort of Mad Lib style in every song, raking in millions of dollars from actual working class people. You know the words, you know the phrases like a dirt road, a cold beer, a blue jeans, a red pickup, a rural noun, simple adjective.
Rural noun, simple adjective absolutely cracks me up. No, it's funny. Like I like I said, I like revisiting stuff. I watched Magnolia again after like a decade. After talking to Ben about that movie, because my brother and I had a big argument about Magnolia and how much I had very big problems with it, and I wound up kind of turning the corner and really liking it a lot better than
That was something I had to turn off and break into 2 days. It was way too much for me. And my first thought after seeing Magnolia broken up into 2 days was, man, that was good. I don't think I'm ever going to watch that movie again for the rest of my life. I haven't.
I think
every month.
If you remove,
it is a grind.
If you remove the hour and a half of Julianne Moore crying, I think it is a fucking phenomenally entertaining movie to watch.
I mean, Tom Cruise not getting the Oscar for that performance is, I mean, to me, it's kind of like my defining Tom Cruise performance.
Well,
everything he's done.
Respect the cock, man.
Ben and I said that he's he did his first step towards getting an Oscar, which was turning in his Golden Globes. And he turns in 2 more of those, he gets a lifetime Oscar. So we just got to hope he gets another couple of Goldens out of there.
I was interested, just since we're on the topic of stand-up comedy.
Yes.
What were your guys' first introductions to it, and like when did you become? I mean, because like Matt, I know that you and I have talked about a lot about, especially like because I think we both relate a lot to like Judd Apatow, who got into the comedy scene at a very young age and then ingratiated himself into that. scene. I feel like we were both people who probably appreciated that art form at a pretty young age. And Nick, I have to thank you for turning me on to some of the more avant-garde comedy as I got a little bit older. But
the hipster,
yes, the hipster
nerdy
yes.
shit. Okay.
Well,
what?
Oh yeah.
Well, I mean, to this day, I would say my favorite comedy album to listen to, sight unseen. Like I'm not looking at the special, and there's no kind of visual representation of it. My favorite comedy special of all time is "Shut Up, You Fucking Baby" by David Cross. I think it's the funniest thing ever. It still cracks me up.
Nick is wearing the shirt, which is fucking. I didn't even saw that. That's amazing.
I didn't even notice that.
I'm wearing my David Cross shirt today, everyone.
So and Ben, I think that's an interesting question because I think we can tackle a little bit of the evolution of comedy on this. And
totally.
I by the way, I picked 8 random clips of comedians. I'm all over the board on it.
No Bill Cosby.
No, I did not do any Bill Cosby. I almost did some Hannibal Buress talking about Bill Cosby, but we can get to that. But yeah, I think that
you didn't pick out any Bill Cosby inside. I mean himself.
Man, I can't. I can't. There's so many terrible jokes going through my head, and they all involve jerking off on feet, and I don't want it. I just don't want it.
He's getting out, isn't he? Aren't they letting him out now after all that?
Because he's like dead, basically. He's like legally dead.
He's turned into a Jello pudding cup, and they're just gonna put him in a easy chair and let him degrade. But
fine by me.
I think what's interesting, because I think the three of us all have probably very different upbringings as far as stand-up goes. Mine is always different in that I had no censorship as a child. So I saw Eddie Murphy Raw when I was a kid. I watched SNL with my parents, so I saw a lot of comedians come through and do kind of lesser routines on SNL that maybe weren't quite as dirty. But my mom was a big George Carlin fan. I remember my brother famously wrote a letter to Steve Martin telling him how unfunny and untalented he was and he should never be allowed on television. So, of course, I knew about Steve Martin because my brother, who's 7 years older than me, is like, well, this guy is dumb. Like, he's just dumb. And that's kind of an interesting one as well, of looking at a comedian like Steve Martin, whose persona as stand-up was the dumbest, like, anti-comedy person, despite the fact that it's a fucking genius writer behind it that is, completely different persona versus who they are. But I saw Raw. My brother had Dice albums, and I was never a Dice fan. I'm still not a Dice fan. I just don't. I understand the concept at the time, but I would go more for Kinison than I would for Dice.
I was about to say I prefer Kinison over Dice.
And I think Kinison is actually one of the ones I pulled a clip for, just because what I liked about Kinison is you can say he's a little bit one note, but I like that he's bringing Sam Kinison's dad was a preacher. He brought that delivery to his stand-up. He has this very kind of
fire and
brimstone preacher stuff. And that was his gimmick, was this soft-spoken stuff and this loud yelling. And he did this one bit on The Tonight Show. And I remember my mom did not like any of the new comedians. Obviously Dice Clay was no good. She wasn't into Kinison, but she loved this bit on The Tonight Show. And it's him. He has 3 backup singers, and he's singing "Are You Lonesome Tonight?" And they do a minute of the song before you get to this part, which is still another about 90 seconds here. But I'm going to play this for you here.
Is your heart filled with pain? Shall I call back again? Tell me, dear, are you lonesome tonight? I wonder if you're lonesome tonight. I wonder a lot of things. Like, are you human? How do you live with yourself? Are you a reptile with a nice hairdo? You snaky tramp! You lied to me! When you told me you love me, you never loved me! You said forever, remember that one? Oh, there's a joke, forever! Yeah, forever, honey!
It's a easy joke.
Shit insane.
But I love, so when we talk about those 4 things, when you talk about delivery, character, structure, and material. No, that's a simple joke. A guy is singing a love song. He has these pent up anger about his ex that comes up in the middle of a love song, and he goes back into it. That's all in his delivery. That's Kinnison's deal. Kinnison's not about the material or the joke. He is about the delivery and how. Yes, and this idea of like
Cook School of Comedy.
Cook is a little different. Cook is a little different.
Right,
a little
right,
different.
I'm just joking.
But no, I do love kind of looking at each of these comics based on what strengths did they play to, and how did that kind of color their continued comedic evolution. And what's really the sad side of all of this is a lot of these people that at least are on my list have passed away, and a lot of them passed away young due to substance abuse, because that's the dark side of stand-ups, is that they are very dark human beings. Most stand-ups that are good, really good at their art, are not, they see things in a different way, and that makes it very difficult for them to go through life.
It's the same as a lot of artists. I mean, you tend to find really great material out of a sort of a sustainable unstable. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
They're able to understand like their own ability to be or their own proclivity of being unstable, and that's usually what allows them to look at things in a different light and also to self-assess and be funny about it.
Listen, if you feel things, if you say that artists can feel things more deeply, then drugs make a lot of sense, because you feel the lows, and when you're really low, you want to feel really good. So where do you go? And how do you manage those conflicting? It's a limitless quagmire of material when you can feel that deeply, but then you feel that deeply.
Well, and then you also have comedians who then they live off of that low. I mean, they're like, hey, here's what happened, and here's where I got to this low, and that's a new comedy special. I mean, it really is a vicious cycle for people in that profession, which is
and I think that's more
hard.
That's a more modern I think the early stand-ups, and I mean Dangerfield's the closest I think to what you're even talking about, Ben, even though he wasn't really presenting that way. He was presenting it in that kind of Benny Young, just like quick one-liner jokes. But there's this idea that he was an old man when he broke. He was in his late 40s when he broke. So this idea of no respect and that concept, it was very familiar to him as an attempted entertainer who just wasn't making it. And then finally, after can you imagine, Dangerfield at my age right now had still not made it. If in 3 years all of a sudden I become one of the biggest comedians.
I don't equate you to being old. So,
but it
doesn't mean anything.
It is interesting. I mean, think of any of us hitting this major career surgence in 10 years, and then that's where the
Fingers
career
crossed.
takes off. Yeah. I mean, it'd be great. I think that he plays into that. Versus, I think what happened with that spate of comics in the late 90s, the spate, not spade of comics, which I do like.
In the late 90s, that fit until...
You were dead on that one. You were dead on. I think it is interesting that that's when you really saw Sarah Silverman and David Cross and some of these other comedians that were just coming out, and some of it was shock, but some of it was just this anti
Patton Oswalt,
stand-up, Patton, and I pulled, of that generation. I think, we can take a step back, I think, from that, because those people were also following the fact that stand-up didn't exist in the form that it does now until it didn't hit its apex really until the late 70s. Early 80s. That's where stand-up became rock star stuff. That when it moved out of the Catskills and went into the clubs in New York, and you're getting past the Lenny Bruce age and all of that. And you have these greats, and you have somebody
Lenny Bruce was around the late 60s, early 70s.
But it still wasn't he was getting arrested for that shit. And it wasn't becoming as mainstream and like just full as it really did, I think, in that late 70s. And you look at somebody probably like George Carlin, and Carlin's a really important cog.
He's a gatekeeper.
Yeah, because he is part of that transition from what was happening in the 60s and the 70s into what was going to happen in the 80s.
And the irony about George Carlin is for those who don't really know much about George Carlin, is George Carlin was a straight edge comedian. He was he was a guy who did like a partnered bit on, night shows and things like that in the 50s and 60s, and was just a straight edge kind of guy.
Short, dark hair. But then
to me, Carlin is the GOAT. And I see, honestly,
I agree with you.
I feel like if Carlin had more musical ability, we might have something closer to Bo, because it's very like, you think the world's great, you haven't been looking hard enough, and exposing inequalities and exposing like the problems in society in a funny, poignant way. And I think it's crazy about Carlin though is like, conservatives love Carlin, and you watch his stand-up, you're like, he would be
the most progressive, like he would be a liberal.
He was more progressive than
I would say it different that
right
he hated both. He hated the system.
Yeah, he hated everybody.
I think that's what's kind of interesting. Everybody wants to adopt Carlin, and Carlin's like, no, the man is out to get you, and the man is everyone in power.
Yeah.
But not just like he railed on religion. Religion is bullshit. Government's bullshit. Everything's bullshit. And just be a decent human being. Try that. And the funny thing is, he would be absolutely rejected by conservatives. But
oh sure,
he is beloved among conservatives today. Which is funny. So mind-boggling to me.
Well, and this is one of Carlin's most famous bits, and this is really where his transition happened from being part of that Catskills crowd to being part of the revolution that was happening through stand-up, which is we are going to say what the fuck we want to say. And it doesn't mean that it has to be important, even though it was. But I think the thing that's important to listen to, I feel like I'm teaching a course, but I'm obsessed with stand-up comedy, but I think listening to the word choice and cadence and pauses, all the greats do it fucking phenomenally, and this is a great representation of it.
That's what I was trying to find, the words that were always dirty, not just part of the time, but completely filth. Well, in looking for these words, I kept finding new categories. We have so many ways of describing these dirty words. We have more ways to describe dirty words than we actually have dirty words. That seems a little strange to me. It seems to indicate that somebody was awfully interested in these words. They kept referring to them. They called them bad words, dirty, filthy, foul, vile, vulgar, coarse, in poor taste, unseemly, street talk, gutter talk, locker room language, barracks talk, bawdy, naughty, saucy, raunchy, rude, crude, lewd, lascivious, indecent, profane, obscene, blue, off-color, risque, suggestive, cursing, cussing, swearing, and all I could think of was shit, piss, fuck, cunt, cocksucker, motherfucker, and tits.
That is a workshopped 60 seconds of every word choice, every progression, every and I think that's what the greats do, is that they dissect everything they're about to say and they reconstruct it so it sounds like it's coming off the top of their head at any moment. And it gives me fucking chills when I hear someone do it so well.
And putting blue next to off color.
Yes.
Another way George Carlin saying, like, nothing we do makes any fucking sense.
Agreed.
We use color to describe ribald humor, and then we use something describing devoid of color to be we're broken fundamentally.
Again, it has to do with the artist and the way that they're approaching their craft, because I feel like a lot of bits end up feeling the best in the business do it, and it feels like it's not rehearsed, but it's totally rehearsed.
Sure.
It's totally off the cuff. Whereas there are other comedians specifically David Cross, and I can say this because the funniest part of his show was completely improvised, and I can tell you why, that I saw 5 years ago. But others are more a little bit like, hey, we're not going to make every show the same. We aren't going to repeat what we said before. We may have a bit, but there's going to be major variations on it, or there's going to be a complete just, fork in the road where we're going to take it to a completely different place and see what this crowd thinks about this conclusion, or this crowd thinks about this conclusion, which is more of the Lenny Bruce, more performance art school of thought.
And it's a lot harder because that's now you're playing with.
You have to have a crowd that's going to go along with you on that journey.
Or you need to know how to read the crowd to know how to play the crowd.
And what was the bit that he improvised that you were going to explain?
Well, so when we saw David Cross, he first came in and just started talking about Fort Lauderdale, which obviously was we're watching him in Fort Lauderdale, and he was just like, yeah. And so he did about this 15-minute bit about him and his wife, like how they had gone to eat the night before. It was definitely like a very Fort Lauderdale experience. It's like completely into that. And then like 10 minutes into this story, 2 girls like running on the front of the stage, like to sit in the front row.
Oh no.
And he just sits there and just stares at them for like a minute. And he's just like, what? So what? Like, and there was this very, very hysterical exchange that goes on where he's just basically picking on them for a minute, and they're eating it up too, you know. And it was this, and then he goes back to, and he's like, yeah. So I was talking about Fort Lauderdale. There you go. And like, I mean, he just basically brought it right back to like, just correlated everything. And then he got into his bit comedy and was doing some of the stuff that he'd obviously done in other cities. But that first 15 minutes was the funniest part of his entire set. And of us for watching it for an hour and 45 minutes.
I'm glad you brought that up, because that's one of the things it's hard to pull clips for. And there are certain not a lot of comedians that are just really good. And you notice, and there are some that are like, so there's a guy I see a lot on TikTok called Nimesh Patel. And I become really obsessed with his stuff, not his normal jokes, but he plays a crowd like a fiddle. Like he will find, and what's funny also is even with those improvised moments, you can also tell which of these guys have kind of figured out, like, so David Cross has played Lauderdale before. He's been doing comedy for 30 years.
He actually said it was only the second time he'd been there.
So that might be. I there's a little cynical side to me that also says that these guys know he's played to drunk girls that came in late to the show. So and obviously I do think that there are
but he was asking them questions and then playing off.
And I think that's where I think there's like an art form to it of what they do with it. But yeah, I think it is. Playing a crowd is the most. It's like watching someone conduct an orchestra. Like it is so just something different, and where they're feeding off of that energy and feeding off the crowd, and that's a really difficult thing for comedians.
And I imagine it would be even more difficult to do that, say, alone in an empty room for a Netflix special.
Touche.
Just saying.
Oh, look at you playing your crowd just like a fiddle. That's why we're gonna watch it.
My crowd like
just bring me all of the weed, and I'm gonna watch it again, and I'm gonna love it, and I will never go back.
I hope so.
So I'm gonna pivot a little bit on the delivery thing here, because I do want to talk about another comedian who I hesitate to bring this comedian up.
If you're talking about comedian, then I think I know what
I don't know if you might know, but you might not. But is something.
Is this sort of like your top 10 comedians?
Not at all. No, not at all.
Okay.
I really did kind of pick, but I picked this comedian because I'm fairly sure, even though I have no evidence necessarily, that they're probably not a nice person, but I am fascinated with their delivery and how they write a joke and how they deliver a punchline. I think I
know who it is.
And Ben
Delia?
No, Ben. No. Ben has a punchline he always associates with me by the same comedian. I picked a different routine.
The Silicon Valley guy?
So I was walking through the desert.
Yes,
and
Anthony
my girlfriend
Jeselnik.
got Anthony Jeselnik.
So I picked this routine, and I think this
I knew that's who it was.
I think this is one of the most expertly set up bits. It's a 2-minute bit, so you have to wait with me a little bit in this one, but let me know what you think.
All right, guys, listen. Jokes are all well and good. I'd like to take a couple minutes right now and talk about something that is important to me. And I will preface this by saying there's a lot of people right now who say that stand-up comedians should just stick to comedy and not talk about anything else. I disagree. I think that stand-up comedy doesn't always have to be funny. Stand-up comedy doesn't always have to be entertaining. Sometimes it's about speaking truth to power. Sometimes it's about pointing out wrongs in the world, even though it might not be popular. So please, indulge me. With all the terrible things going on in America right now, and you know exactly what I'm fucking talking about. With all the terrible things going on in this country right now, the thing that drives me the most crazy are the people who see all this awful stuff happening and they still flip out over the little things. My biggest pet peeve in America today are people who see all this horrible stuff going on and yet they still overreact to shit that just does not matter. For example, have you ever dropped a baby? Holy shit, do people overreact.
Right. Way to go.
You drop a baby in America today, I swear, people hit the roof before the baby even touches the floor. And it's not a big deal. How do I know? Because I do it all the time. In fact, I don't think I've ever held a baby to completion.
That is a workshopped bit. Like
Nick,
that is
you're
like that is a
I know.
bit that has
I
been.
mute myself during the stand-ups so I don't hear you guys heavy breathing over the stand-ups.
No, that was Sully. Sorry.
I can barely hear
Jeselnik. My dog has congestive heart failure. He's sitting over here.
I'm
by
just
me.
trying to be considerate.
No, I like his gimmick is that delivery. It's that Christopher Walken-esque pausing, but he's really
he is walking
good at. He is really good at it. And like I said,
When
I
was
do
that
think he
bit?
might be a douchebag. But
When was that bit?
this is brand new. This was it came out I think right at the beginning of pandemic.
He's friends with a lot of comics. I would have to think that he's probably a douchebag the same way that all comics are douchebags, but maybe not an
He
exceptional
dated
douchebag.
Amy Schumer for a while, and that didn't go great. But that's also a couple, so you know. Who
Towson
knows?
University graduate Amy Schumer.
I like his weird delivery for what is and that's actually a pretty good marriage of joke and delivery. But he has other stuff like his other joke. The one that Ben always attributes to me is a guy gets bit by a snake. It bites him in the foot. They tell him to suck out the poison.
It bites his girlfriend on the. They're hiking and it bites the girlfriend on the foot, and she says, "You have to suck the poison out." And he goes, "So she's dead."
And that's an old joke, and it's an old gag, but the delivery is great. I mean like that joke is 100 years old. Like cowboys and Indians were making those jokes.
It's like the aristocrats.
Yeah. But I think that is interesting because that's the other side that happens with comedy a lot is they talk about material being stolen. And it's kind of interesting to look at some of the really good comedians in that their material is almost steal proof because their delivery and presentation of the material is so specific to them. So you look at somebody like Chris Rock. there are other people making similar jokes to jokes that Chris Rock is making, but once Rock found his voice, which he didn't have for a while, like when he was on SNL, it was not, and his early stand-up was not good. When he came out
his literal voice, the voice he does.
100%, Nick, you're bigger and blacker. All of a sudden, his cadence and delivery and voice completely changed, and he owned that stage. And that was his persona. I come out, I fucking speak the truth, I own this crowd, I'm going to tell you how the world is. And that's not how his early shit was. And that took him time to get to, but once he found it, holy shit, like that is one of the greatest stand-up specials of all time. Like, it's a one I cannot play almost anything from on here. But it's an amazing piece of stand-up comedy that is as good as anything really that came before it. And really, I think that's another special that turned comedy on its head of like, holy shit, this guy just came out and fucking like just talked about all of this stuff and owned that crowd out there. I mean, it's crazy.
Well, it's also funny because earlier Nick mentioned Dane Cook as like who I think is this is often kind of the battering boy for a lot of things, for like stealing jokes.
Wait a minute, battering boy?
He was the batter boy.
Battering boy.
He was battered.
Is that a thing? Like whipping boy, right?
Yeah, the battering ram boy.
Battering?
Yeah, the battering ram boy.
Battering boy?
There was the mascot for Joss Sequoia.
The battering boy, like the Batman through the battering.
Okay. Battering. I'm just trying to pick a battering boy.
No.
An image, quite an image. Keep going. Sorry.
I said battering boy because
the battered boy
a lot.
Okay,
I constantly
the battered lad. The battered lad. Yes.
That was his character in Mystery Men.
Was he the? Who was he? Was he the toaster?
He was the waffler.
The waffler. I knew it was some sort of kitchen device.
Waffle man.
No, Dane Cook is a really interesting one to talk about.
But anyways, I think it's interesting that he is friends with a lot of comics, and he has definitely, especially a lot of people have told him, accused him of aping Louis C.K. on a few bits. And Louis C.K. has come straight out and been like, I'm sure he's gotten sloppy at points, but he's way too nice of a guy to ever like.
He put him in the show. Louis.
Yeah. But also, I feel like the people who like kind of bag Dane Cook have never really listened to Dane Cook, because Dane Cook's, especially like his 2010 special, is exceptionally amazing. I mean, it really is, because he leans into the more personal performance art shit, where he's talking about the fact that his mom and his dad died of cancer within 3 months of each other, and the fact that like everybody on the internet wanted him to die, and like he was just like in this fucking terrible place. And he has this great 10-minute build for, you know, this whole thing about like how he was getting just shit hate mail and stuff like that. His parents had died. He was in an awful place or whatever. And it's one of the best joke turnarounds I've ever heard in a 10-minute bit. A 10-minute bit. I mean, there's not a laugh to be found in the first 9 minutes.
That's kind of interesting. Well, because
super serious. Because
I think Cook had a strange progression. So I remember I heard him. I had downloaded stuff of his on fucking LimeWire. That's how
late
old
90s,
it was.
early 2000s.
Like all that early stuff.
He was the biggest comedian in the world in 2000.
Well, he had not actually gotten. He had built a website and he got his clips out there and he was getting his stuff shared. And he got really big, and there was a backlash from the comedians because he was a handsome guy, and they felt he was relying too much on the fact that girls just showed up to the show because that he was a handsome
he was also
comedian.
Just loud.
Yes, but
extreme. That was David Cross's thing. Was extreme comedy.
He reminded me of Ryan Reynolds, and I like Ryan Reynolds, so it didn't. Sure. It like I liked it, and then he did a special in like 2007 or 8 called Circle. Or Cirque or something like that. I forget what it was.
A Vicious Circle was 2008.
Okay, so that was a bad show. And also, and
Terrible show.
it hit at the wrong time because there were people that were kind of championing him on like someone like me, but I also didn't want to be the asshole that was like, oh, you should listen to this like frat boy because he's like really popular, and he got shut down.
And I think that, I mean, honestly, like, you know, you talk about the resentment. I honestly think that's kind of viable when you think about it, because the question then becomes, is he that bad of a stand-up comedian? No, of course not. But like, when you look at an industry that, you know, we've named 2 women, and it's like, it's been toxic and borderline dangerous for women since its inception. You talk about the Bill Cosbys, you talk about the male bro culture that has made, and we just talked about Louis C.K. without talking about the fact that he would just put out his dick and masturbate in front of people.
We're not talking about him because he's been pretty much extricated from the community.
So, well, all I'm saying is that is the criticism of Dane Cook. Before everyone was woke, I think people kind of felt like, okay, like, he's not bad, but why is he a superstar?
Dane Cook's comedy, though, was not sexist at all. Like, I mean, there were
I'm not saying
way,
I'm talking about privilege. I'm talking about, would he be the world's biggest comic in 2004 if he wasn't a good-looking white dude? That's all I'm saying.
No,
that's where the resentment is coming from.
You're
That's
right.
where the resentment is coming from.
But I'll take one star off of his 5-star rating on that one for the cops chasing him, in that it's not just because he's like a white, like, there are plenty of white dudes who are making a great time of comedy during then. But it was the fact that he was good looking. It was really, and that's kind of it's a shitty double standard that people they especially in that time period. It was
Pablo Francisco is just like, fuck this guy, he's too good looking.
This is where you look at, you have the comedians of comedy, and it's Patton Oswalt and David Cross. Like, they're not the calendar guys, and you've got Dane Cook. Like, who doesn't fit in this physical lineup of these guys? And there was a resentment for him.
Unusual, unique-looking comics play on that as much as a good-looking guy.
100%, yeah, and that's where I did, like, I felt I can't say I felt bad for him, but I felt that the treatment, poor Dane Cook. No, I felt that it was kind of shitty to dismiss him specifically just because he appealed to women more than a lot of other comedians did. He had some really good. That's what people said about.
And again, like I said, anybody who doubts his comedy chops needs to listen to his 2010 special. It was on HBO, is available. He did it at the Comedy Store. He did it in front of 200 people, small crowd, and it fucking kills. It's one of the top 5 comedy specials I've ever heard in my entire life, because he gets super personal in it. And he's like, hey, listen, like, I've had fucking death threats on me. Like, I mean, he gets really into that side of it. And the fact that, like, he went through like a fucking terrible 3-year period where everybody wanted to kill him, and then both of his parents died. And his girlfriend broke up.
If you want to contribute to the Dane Cook Fund, we will provide a phone number. I'm making a terrible joke, Ben.
You might remember people in Tallahassee thought that me and Ben's band should have been as popular as we were because we appealed to women. But
this is actually a true story.
Persecuted, good-looking white men.
Yeah. People thought that we were just a pop rock band to play for frat and sorority audiences.
This is a true story. Came out of Ben's mouth so effortless on that. It was just so quick to play.
No, true story.
So I'm not going to get to all of the clips I pulled, but there is one. We mentioned this comedian a few times. This is just a personal favorite of mine that I have to play.
Buzzy?
It's the male modern equivalent of Roof Buzzy, and it is Patton Oswalt, and this is, I think, one of the greatest 130 seconds that he has done here.
The ads for Black Angus, have you noticed how it's turned into this gauntlet of angry food? It's like they're almost like challenging you, like, at Black Angus, We'll start you off with our appetizer platter, featuring 5 jumbo deep-fried Gulf shrimp, served on a disc of salted butter, with 15 of our potato bacon bombs and a big bowl of pork cracklings with our cheese and butter dipping sauce. You're like, we're all gonna split that. Oh, you'll each get your own. Then we'll take you to our mile-long soup and salad bar, featuring bacon and cheese cream soup and our 5 head of iceberg lettuce He-Man salad, served in a punch bowl with 18 pounds of ranch dressing, pork stuffed deep-fried croutons, and what the hell, a couple of corn dogs. Hey man, I'll tell you what, I'll get like a mixed green salad. Hey, I'll suck a cock on the Golden Gate Bridge before I bring you a mixed green, buddy. What? Then we'll wheel out our bottomless trough of fried dough. What? Wait a minute. Am I getting a steak? Oh, you'll get a fucking steak. Because then we'll bring out our 55-ounce Los Mesa He-Man steak slab, served with a deep-fried pumpkin stuffed with buttered scallops and 53 of our potato bacon bombs. Oh, dude, I don't think... And then bend over, Abigail May, because here comes a gravy pipe!
The thing I love most about that routine... and
Wait. Can I order this for Father's Day?
The thing that is so great about that routine is that's, I think, 2009. 3 or 4... Oh, no, early. Because,
really? Is it earlier than that?
Well, because somewhere there exists, and it is something that if I'm ever in the Illuminati and can just request things that I would like to have, there is a reel of animation from the Pixar animators of Remy the Rat delivering that entire speech, which was their pitch to the studio to have Patton Oswalt voice Remy in Ratatouille. But
with the accent? That's so
they
weird.
Animated the
Why didn't they
entire
animate
routine.
They should have animated it to his failure pile and a sadness bowl when he was doing it in his own voice.
So that hadn't hit yet. That happened post... like he'd already gotten Ratatouille and started recording.
No one does stand up about food like Patton Oswalt.
He also has a bit about how he judged his weight gain based on how he delivered the
Jim Gaffigan.
And Gaffigan was on my list.
Argument there.
Well, Patton did have the one bit where he talked about his weight gain in terms of how he delivered the sound of bees and words. So if he was talking about he's like, oh, when I'm skinnier, I say blueberries. But when I'm like really overweight, I'm like, blueberries. Like, I want some blueberry pancake. He's like, you just hear the jowls in the delivery. But yeah, Patton is Patton's a great one because he's not necessarily the voice. His is the material, but that cadence is definitely like, I'm gonna pick these words and pick these things on here. Yes,
Patton Oswalt's, I think, one of the goats of the new generation for sure. I mean, like now he's kind of almost of a bygone generation. I mean, like
they are. I mean, the David Cross, Patton Oswalt years are behind us.
I think he's still A-list because he's and you wonder why this is even a topic on a podcast that normally deals with movies, but there is a lot of turnover. I mean, even Bill Burr is now in The Mandalorian.
Yeah.
He was never on SNL or anything like that. I think he was pretty much a pure stand-up comedian. But like Patton's still gonna be getting work as sort of an A-lister for a while. And you look at the list of people who had successful stand-up careers and who are currently working and will continue to work. Stand-up comedians have a really long shelf life if they break in.
Well, or if they evolve. So you look at most of these stand-ups that are really good, they are huge on Twitter. So like even Jim Gaffigan, who's playing big shows, got huge on Twitter with his anti-Trump stuff and literally alienated a whole chunk of like Jim Gaffigan is about as white bread as you get. So there was a large part of his audience
owning Jim Gaffigan's first
I love Gaffigan
special in 2006.
Yeah. He was a big Heartland comedian. And he just lost his shit during the Trump regime, and he was like, "Fuck it."
Dirty words.
And then he went on like a rant on Twitter and was like, "You know what? fuck this shit, fuck Trump, fuck all of this. And like all these people are like, oh my God. And he gained a whole other side to his audience. But like the comedians have really had to realize two things that they've needed to embrace, a lot of them, if they're older school. One is social media, and the other is essentially podcasting. And especially over the pandemic, that became a huge thing because they couldn't go to clubs. So Sarah Silverman now has a fucking great podcast, like a really, really good podcast where she's doing like just, it's like slow riffs of her routines because they're not her routines. There's something in between. But I think there's this big progression now with these comedians, especially the old school ones, are going to be going towards things like podcasts. So Sarah Silverman, I know you're listening. If you want to, like, we can pencil you in. Maybe like in August, we've got a pretty full slate, but if like maybe in August you want to come and do the new way, we can try to make that work. You know, just saying. Boy, man, I have delivered like two show-stopping terrible lines.
I just wanted to get the moment.
Yeah. We had to let it breathe, man.
I want to get that moment, the gravitas it deserves.
We have let approximately 4 things breathe on this show ever in the history. There's no breath in the new way. There's only dead air.
By 4 things, I'm assuming you're meaning all of our private members and Ryan's
dead air.
But when you talk about Gaffigan, like one other thing I love about comics is like it's sort of like the Batman and Daredevil versus Punisher. Like some of them won't kill, some of them won't curse. There's like, you know what? I'm gonna live in the stand-up world, and I'm gonna be the clean comedian. You know,
it's like Seinfeld,
Foxworthy's, and Seinfeld. Yeah, like there are
and definitely won't eat pussy.
right.
Oh man.
Yeah, Batman. I hope that we dedicate.
Do we just say Jerry Seinfeld and Jim Gaffigan don't eat pussy? We're gonna get sued.
No, we're playing off the DC Comics Harley Quinn series and the whole Batman. Which, if you don't know what that means, you should Google it and go down the rabbit hole. And I hope we dedicate more time to a future episode. But
it's made it wider spread than you think.
Who's your favorite no-kill comic?
Well, until the whole Trump thing, which sort of changes thing, I think Gaffigan was my favorite. Just like easy, like I equate it to the comedian you can put on for your mom or your grandmother and your mom, and you're not going to be concerned about what happens. I think Gaffigan's got just fucking phenomenal material and great delivery.
And it changed for you once he became anti-Trump?
It didn't change, but I'm curious if his comedy is going to change because he made a decided move to be like, I'm fucking railing against the system on this.
On Twitter.
And you're not used to this, but fuck you if you don't like it. And he really took a stand. Now, I don't know that you're right. It might not change anything he does stand-up wise.
We'll see.
But I also would love to fucking see Jim Gaffigan, the same as Seinfeld. Like, I would love to watch a blue routine by Seinfeld. I've watched comedians in cars getting coffee. Like, I would love to see
Kramer.
That.
Kramer already did it.
That's not the same. How dare you? But no, I watched Seinfeld on comedians' cars. There's a lot of angst and anger in him, and I think Seinfeld absolutely could go Carlin on some shit if he just did it, but that's just not his interest. Like, his comedy mind doesn't think like that.
He's too old. There's way too much money at this point. So,
I mean, it's not like he's going to lose money by fucking changing his shit. He doesn't, I don't think he thinks in blue.
Think about Chris Rock, right? Like, he was throwing stuff up against the wall and it didn't stick. And then it did. For Jerry, it stuck right away.
Yep.
So then you're like, well, I guess this is how I'm going to, spend my comedic career. This is the comedic persona. I think sometimes you go out with a distinct, like, oh, I'm not going to curse. I'm going to be like this. And then it's not embraced. And you do make those tweaks and you have a renaissance or you reinvent yourself, or that's your first taste of success. And maybe we will see that from Gaffigan. I don't necessarily think that he will. It's like, do you think if Jeff Dunham went on a Twitter rant against Trump, do you think he's going to give up the fucking puppets? No, he knows He knows what keeps the lights on.
Dunham's gonna move to live corpses, like actual just corpses that he
I don't think Jeff
puppets
Dunham
with
is
his-
allowed to. Well, I'm sure he's allowed to live in America anymore because he's not well liked.
Yeah, I mean,
He
the
just
two
lives in Vegas. He never leaves Las Vegas.
you can never go outside the city limits. I mean, the two most famous not blue working comedians are Seinfeld and Cosby, and both of them have been very vocal against working blue. And Seinfeld's just like, I can make the same, like, and Gaffigan's never not worked blue, but he is still very accessible by almost anybody with his
it's smart.
stuff.
And it's smart, and it's a choice. It's like, you know, you play to your strengths and you play to what's going to make you the most money. And if it aligns, then great.
So I feel like I have to say it just because we're talking about a stand-up comedy episode. When I was in third grade, this is full disclosure on this point. It was
about to get a secret from Ben Wilson. Effortless secrets
February.
from Ben Wilson.
So we were supposed to do a project on a African American leader in our society. And I was in third grade. This was 1992. And I did mine on Bill Cosby. And so my project was I did the entire set of Bill Cosby himself in front of the entire class.
Wow.
As a third grade.
Were you
you didn't do a voice, did you?
You were not in
I did all the voices.
You didn't have makeup of any kind.
No,
did you?
I did no makeup.
Jesus.
No, there was none of that.
I think we're okay. We okay?
But
let me go. Hold on, let me look at the judge. Okay, judges say we're okay for right now. But just we're on a line.
Third grade, guys.
Thin line.
He's problematic.
I was 10 years old. Or 9 years old, actually, probably not even. But I have to say that was the comedy special that turned me on to comedy was Bill Cosby himself. It's
a great special. Him talking to God and God talking to Moses and Noah.
The thing I still remember is besides chocolate cake for breakfast, which is everybody's favorite bit, was
which
dentist.
we now know is about jerking off on women's feet at 6 a.m. in the morning. It's chocolate cake for breakfast.
The dentist bit about how the dentist always tries to talk to you, as he's doing work, and he just says, he's like, so you ever do any fishing? And he's like, he's like, where do you usually go? Yes, I've been there many times myself, and that type of stuff was what cracked me up as a 10-year-old, and I would recite it to anybody who would listen. So
I was still. In fact, it's a weird thing. I bonded with this girl I was trying to date over our shared love of Bill Cosby, like old Bill Cosby stand in college. When I was in college, this is in 2000. Again, didn't know he was, doing things to women's feet. But and
person.
drugging them, but like
raping people.
Yeah,
and that's crazy because me and my sister love the Cosby Show.
Of course, who didn't love it? It's not like
we all watched the Cosby
not
Show.
Fooled.
It was like the one thing that our parents allowed us to watch on Friday nights.
And it's really good written television. It's really on the level of like Michael Jackson. I don't listen to Michael Jackson anymore.
Carsey Werner, man.
You know what Dr. Huxtable's favorite Clash song was?
Oh no, I don't want to know.
Rudy can't fail.
I will recommend the old. Man, we can't go out on that. We gotta recover for just a couple of minutes.
Someone has to say something.
So
Rudy can't fail.
So I'm gonna double down. I'm gonna double down on the Cosby and say, if you are,
can you play us off with Rudy Can't Fail this episode?
I will not.
Please.
If you are struggling with your former love of Bill Cosby, with the current knowledge of the horrible things he did, I urge you to watch House of Cosbys, which was an animated series. I believe Justin Roiland was a part of that back in the day.
Oh, yeah. It is Channel 101, Roiland.
It's all of the nostalgia with none of the actual people involved in it, so you can watch it guilt-free, and you're going to come out of it saying, Rudy, and you're going to not feel bad about it, and that's the best we can offer you here the New Way. But you know what? I think we have barely scratched the surface on some of the stand-ups, so I think we're going to have to do a part 2 at some point on this episode. But I'm very interested to hear what you guys had to say on all of these things. So I think you brought some really interesting points up for this.
Well, thank you, Matthew. That's nice of you to say so.
I mean, I'm trying to bring it back to the circle jerk where I tell you all you did.
Thanks so much
things.
for listening to NPR this week.
I did also love on last week's musical episode that Ben's one line in our musical song was delivered in full Woody Allen. Actually, not full Woody Allen, full Edward Norton doing Woody Allen. But you need to watch that again and just you listen to it, you'll hear it. It's a subtle new way. Little minutia for you hardcore fans up there. Anyway, thank you so much for listening to the New Way podcast, and we will talk to you next time on a 1, on a 2, on a 3, and cheers.
You don't have to count it down next time. We could just do it. I'm just saying, we can do it. Just go and just go cheers.
Okay, and.
Cheers.
Oh.
Not you.
Oh, shit.